What is up, everybody? It is When Men Are Intimate live. I don't know what's about to happen tonight. I don't know how many people are actually about to be on camera. It might be two people. It might be three people. I don't think it's about to be four people. But whatever it's about to be, it's about to be a good conversation. Okay. What's going on, everybody? If this is your first time joining this conversation, this is, we say the same thing every time. I ain't saying it today. I ain't saying it. This is what I'm going to say. This is a bunch of men talking about man things. This is stuff we talk about in private. We're bringing it into the public so that we can try to inspire you, motivate you, make you think, make you wonder, and even make you question what you think you know about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. What you think? That was pretty good. What you think,
Yeah,
Darius?
yeah, that was good. That was great. I'm here for it.
All right. So listen, as of right now, it's me and Darius. So, man, what you been tripping on lately? What have you been thinking about? What's been kind of what has been making you sit and ponder life as of late? We'll start there.
Mm. So I've been in this space, and I guess we can thank Dylan's presence is still here, even though it's not here, right? Um, I've been in this discipleship, like really, like trying to understand it more, really break it down,
Mm-hmm.
and really like look at what it looked like true discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's nothing against any of the programs or anything like that, but when we see Jesus do discipleship, it's direct access and it's real intimacy. He's intimate with them, they're intimate with him. And what it doesn't look like is a funnel.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I think it shouldn't be called discipleship if you have other intentions or if there's other things connected to it. Like if it's really a coaching program, then it should be called a coaching program. If it's really a whatever, it should be called that. I don't think we should call it discipleship because of the access piece to me. Um, when you and I have a conversation, there's no third party involved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to email you in order to get access to you first.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to go through Ashley in order to access you first.
Mm-hmm.
There's a direct interaction there that I believe is really important when it comes to how I see discipleship and how I believe it should truly look just from what I've studied when it comes to the life of Christ.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I think I can actually see it more than one way. I'm thinking about this right now. I mean, the overall of what you're saying is hard to disagree with, right? That discipleship really should look like, well, you said the word access, right? That discipleship, I guess, here's the question. Let me ask you a question before I start to give you my take. What's the difference between discipleship and mentorship? Is there a difference? What's the difference between discipleship and mentorship?
So the way I see discipleship is it's more of a daily situation. I feel like there's a deeper commitment there versus mentorship from my experience and what I've seen it to be is there's somebody who sits up high for lack of better words, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have others who are trying to glean.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas discipleship is more of a walking with through life hand in hand type situation on a regular basis, not just here and there. Um, and I think that maybe like I haven't looked up the definitions, you know what I'm saying, to really like look at the two, but just from what I've seen it to be and my experience with it and what it looks like a lot of people tend to do is it's this person has done or accomplished a certain amount of things and then here we are trying to do the same and just kind of glean from them. um I think that there's a from my experience there's a deeper interaction between the two when it comes to discipleship. um I'm letting you see the vulnerability. I think is the key. Like, you're seeing all of me even if you're looking at me from a different angle. Like, even if you perceive me to be above you, there's a part of me, like, you get access to it all, not just to a portion of it.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I think the reason that, and maybe we should say why this is even important, right? From a practical standpoint. As a man, I am always looking for guidance and direction. And one thing that we know to be true is that guidance and direction is not always easy to come by. That I could take you to socioeconomic places. I could take you to, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of different ways that I could show it to you. But the breakdown of it is to look for another bruh that you can learn from, be guided by, be mentored by, be shaped by, is a rare thing and a hard thing to come by. And so, if I am finally able to find a path towards wisdom and guidance, and then it feels like the path is an impossible path to take, it's incredibly discouraging. That's very disheartening when, and I've been in those situations, somebody says, "Follow me." And then when you try to follow them, 17 armor bearers are standing around them, and five more bodyguards, and so at the end of the day, you don't have no access to the people who are saying follow you because they're giving you access. And you're like, I don't know that it was this hard to get to Jesus.
Yeah. A- and absolutely, like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, where are these barriers coming from?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because when you started talking about, the different ways that people can come into discipleship, I certainly see that in scripture there was more than one path. Because even if I'm looking Old Testament, we know that there was companies of prophets. So the discipleship was for a specific targeted purpose. It wasn't just a general partnership to get closer to God. It was a this is a direction for people who hear and see God, or hear from God, see spiritual things. This is a pathway to a certain type of education and stewardship, right? So we can see that it's possible for discipleship to be targeted. But the access piece you're bringing up is something that's so critical. I feel like sometimes, and I know that this isn't real, I know it's not true, but sometimes it feels almost impossible to find spiritual guidance. And I don't think, again, I don't think that's real, and I don't think it's true, but it's how it feels sometimes. Like, you get into one circle and you're like, I don't have access to the person who actually can make a difference. Then you get into a different circle and you're like, I still don't feel like I have access to the person who feels like they could make a difference. Why is that so difficult? And maybe it's because we're glamorizing certain people and certain gifts. Maybe that's half the problem.
Yeah, one of the things I've been really sitting on, again, that video Dylan sent us earlier with Tim Ross and Mike Todd.
Mm-hmm.
uh I think what was powerful about it that I feel like we need to really kind of do an internal investigation, right? Is is this a God thing or is this a me thing?
Mm.
Am I choosing it based off of how they inspire me and based off of what I feel like might be the connection and based off of what I see the accomplishments being and where I feel like I'm headed? Is it a me thing or is it a God thing? And the reason why I say that is because even as I'm thinking about like the disciples and I'm thinking about well, specifically Jesus and then just and the 12, and then I'm thinking about like Elijah and Elisha.
Mm.
There wasn't a struggle to get to.
Mm-hmm.
There was an encounter that happened, and based off of that encounter, there was options that that were given. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
there was a question that was asked, and then there were options. And I think sometimes what it might be is we're focused on the wrong things
Mm.
when we're trying to get that access. And what the beautiful thing is about it that we may not see in the moment and that we may want to fight against is that maybe that's God blocking us from entering into something we're not supposed to be entering into.
That's good.
But because we haven't taken the time to seek Him about it, we're fighting it and we're
Mm.
fighting against Him. And we're trying to break down a door and enter a door that God is clearly like, this ain't it.
It's not your door.
Yeah. And then sometimes I think that another thing I look at too is like sometimes we're certain encounters that we have with people is a part of the progression to the place.
Mm.
And we want to pitch a tent there.
Mm-hmm.
And what comes to mind because of where I'm at, right? And I feel like every time we're on, I'm talking about Joseph in some way, shape, or form, right? But what comes to mind is Joseph, and like Potiphar's house was not the final destination,
Mm-hmm.
even though
And
it
And
was
Potiphar wasn't the final mentor.
right. He wasn't the final one, and so it was a part of this the journey and a part of the stage to where it was a stage in his life to where he was going, but it wasn't the completion of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you just said something that I think is really good too. Like, I think sometimes we're trying to make something permanent that may not be meant to be permanent.
Mm.
Because remember, there were people who left John the Baptist and went with Jesus.
There you go. 100%.
And it wasn't that they weren't called to John the Baptist, or maybe God didn't lead them to John the Baptist, but there was there that season or that time there may have been up, or John had took them as far as he could, and now it was time for them to transition on. I think sometimes we lock into certain things and certain people in certain places, and it's not as permanent as we would desire for it to be.
Can we tell the truth about this? Like if we're gonna talk about it, can we tell the truth? TRUF, the truth? Because because if we're gonna be honest about this, there's a reason why people get twisted and caught up in this. And it doesn't really have to do with God and hearing God and the spirit of God. It has to do with the required loyalty of man. There you get these I said what I said. You get these lectures and these talks about how loyal you are supposed to stay to people. And so if you think about leaving or moving forward or crossing over into a new place, there is this level of criticism. With a lot of ministries, you become an outcast with all the people you were friends with the moment that you walk away. I love you. I'm always here for you. Anything that you need, you go somewhere else now, Satan. Like, it's just like you are just all of a
Listen,
sudden like the scarlet letter, right? And so I'm bringing Jay
where
on.
they
Uh,
speaking the locust and the cankerworms over you.
that's it, right? And so we have to be honest about the fact that there is you gave the perfect example, right? There are people who are following John. They begin to follow Jesus. And some of the men who are still with John go to John and say, "Yo, what's happening over there? Why are these people going in that direction? And John is like, didn't I tell you that he was greater than me? John has an understanding that they were with me for a season. They were with me for a time. And when it comes to men and men, not men and Jesus, sometimes it's not even better. It's just this is the more appropriate place for you now. This is how you have to go grow into the next thing. I've taken you as far as I can. And instead of that being applauded, you get berated. And I think that that's sad. And that's why people stay stuck in the wrong place for too long. What up, Jay?
Thank you, y'all. Good to be here.
I can't hear you at all.
You can't. Hello, like that? No, anything?
It's really muffled.
Yeah, it
Like,
sounded like a robot.
yeah, I'll say the fact that you had your earbuds in, it sounded like they were hiding in your beard.
Wait a minute. Oh, that's good.
Okay, how about now?
Oh, that's great.
That's good.
Yeah.
Say less. Cool. We gonna do that. I forget these earbuds. Technology. Um, yeah. What's up, y'all? Good to be here.
Yeah. So we were just in the middle of talking about not necessarily being covered, but mentorship, stewardship, right? Discipleship, and this concept that when we see a lot of biblical examples, we see movement, right? We see that sometimes you are covered by one person, and then over time something may shift or may change, right? But when it comes to the way that it seems like we're told it's supposed to be in this day and age, there's only one path and you have to stay on this one path and there can be no variation from the path, but sometimes the path you're on doesn't even have access. So you are being mentored by somebody who can't actually mentor you. You're being pastored by somebody who can barely pastor you, right? And so, and especially in the mega church day, culture and things like that. And so how do we navigate that so that as men we can have people who can lead us and correct us and give us wisdom as we lead our families?
I think part of it could be in we really have to be sure or get or we really have to get the clarity of who we really are,
Hmm.
because like I feel like if you don't know who you really are and you're trying to search and find, so you're gonna cling to anybody who's gonna see any worth or value in you. Like
Hmm.
the minute for like the whole thing. I know typically we say with women like, oh, you fell for the first guy that said that you look pretty, like something like that. So, but in the same way, the first person that says like, oh, you're pretty, like, oh, you're anointed, oh, like I see something special in you. There's a propensity, especially if you haven't heard that before, and if you're not sure fully on like your gifting package as far as like how God has made you, it's easy to cling to that. And
Hmm.
so that's cool for a certain season, but ultimately you got to get sure on like this is the path I'm taking. Otherwise, like you said, you're clinging to dead ends,
Hmm.
and
Ooh, clinging to dead ends.
it's not gonna get you nowhere. Or like when you turn down a road and it says no outlet, like okay, that road can only take you but so far, but eventually that road is going to end.
Ooh, I just said I had the comparison in my head of a person who is a means to an end versus a person who is a dead end. Right? That ultimately there's a version of me that I know is in here that he hasn't come out yet. It's untapped potential, right?
Right.
And I'm thinking that I'm going down a pathway of somebody who can help me tap it, right? Somebody who can help me push forward. And then sometimes unfortunately we go down the path where no, the only thing that's here is dead growth, right? Stunted growth. The only thing that's going to be here is a lack of progression. And that's, yeah, that's real.
And it's a I was listening to Tim Ross. He had Michael Todd on the Basement, his podcast, most recently, and
We know we discussed it before you
So,
came.
Jason, we actually were just talking about that before you hopped on. That's great. That's great because you had no idea. But that goes to show how in tune we all are in this conversation, though.
There it is.
But go ahead, bro.
yeah. So basically, what they talked about and everything, but the key, if y'all didn't bring it up already, but if you did for a repeat, Mike said that Tim got to him basically at his most vulnerable to where whoever would have got to him first, that would have been the direction he would have gone. And so that also, I think, is a lesson for us that in our most vulnerable states where maybe, we've been on the path, but it's getting a little weary and, we feel like maybe we're reaching that dead end or we're reaching the end of whatever road it is, we have to be very careful who we cling to next, because either they're going to be an on-ramp to more, or they're going to be an off-ramp from your purpose. Because who would have think, like, whether you love them, disagree with them, whatever the case may be, the fact of the matter, Michael Todd has great influence and I believe is approved by God. He helps millions, not just with his preaching, but also with his giving and everything like that. Like, I believe the world is much better because of a Transformation Church. And so no matter how you may feel about that, there's a specific imprint that he has on our generation. And so I guess I say that to say that, like, I wonder how different things or different lives would be if not a 10, but maybe somebody else got to him. We're saying like, hey man, you need to preach this way, or you need to do it this way, or you need to focus on fundraising instead of focus on being a better man. I just, and so thus in the same way with us, when we're in our vulnerable spots, I think that's even more. We have to be very, 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 very careful and very, very in tune with Jesus. Because I also think about, like, when Jesus fasted for 40 days, he was led into the wilderness, fasted for 40 days, and it was at, you could say, his weakest, his most vulnerable at the end of fasting for those 40 days. Then that's when the temptations come. And so, normally the temptations are going to come when you like fortified and you're like, man, I'm rocking with the whole armor of God. Mess with me if you want. It's going to come when when your arm's a little tired, the shield's a little bit too low. You put down the helmet because it was bothering your head. And, it's going to come in those moments where you just, man, just getting a little tired holding up this shield of faith, I'm trying to swing with this sword, but my arm's getting heavy and whatnot. It's going to come in those vulnerable times that somebody may come and try to derail you. And so in those moments, we just have to be very, very careful of who we give our ear to, because like I said, either going to be an on-ramp to more or an off-ramp from our purpose. If any of that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, bro. I just want you to know that people are going to send you to hell. Because you support Mike Todd. Just as long as you're aware, because clearly we all can see beyond whatever it is that God's doing without God. But we're just going to continue to move forward. One of the things that jumped out to me, man, that I think this is really good that I want to go back to is we were talking about John the Baptist and Jesus. And what I wanted to talk about is the maturity of John the Baptist and the understanding he had when it came to, I've brought you this far and there's somebody else who's going to take you somewhere else, right? And so what that did was it also sparked in me the Paul and Apollos in 1 Corinthians 3. And how what I firmly believe is one of the issues when it comes to discipleship is a lack of maturity when it comes to discipling,
Mm.
and a lack of maturity being instilled in the ones who are following. Because if you really are convicted, or you really have a true revelation of the fact that in 1 Corinthians 3, it's the first and foremost, it starts off talking about maturity, right? Like, you no longer need to be on milk, but you need meat. But as we continue to go on, they're talking about division and how people are like, yo, I'm with Paul. And some people are like, oh, I'm with Apollos. And he's like, at the end of the day, all of this is God's. And both of us are equal. It doesn't matter if you're watering or if you're planting. We're equal. We just have different jobs. And what I think we need, I believe that one of the issues is, and something to grow from, is to really embody that and understand it. Like, sometimes you may only have certain people for a certain period of time because you've given them all that you can give them for where they're headed. And somebody else is more skilled in another area that they may need, and that's okay. And I think that that loyalty piece that is being taught and is being pushed and everything, it isn't bound in scripture, because we see it all throughout scripture where people are moving around. Like, and God is intentional on moving certain people around, right? Moses died. Now it's time for somebody else to move forward. Like, to the point where he understood. God is so powerful and understand, and so masterful in knowing how we operate, that like, we don't know what happened to Moses' body because he knew they wouldn't be able to commit to the new leadership if they knew where it was. And sometimes we're busy crying over dead things. And we're crying over old seasons, and we're crying over this other stuff. And God is like, I need you to move forward. Not neglecting that the loss was real. Even when we look at that situation, they grieved. There was a moment to grieve, but then there was a moment that they had to move forward. And I think what ends up happening is we internalize a lot of things that are happening based off of our lack of maturity or our lack of teaching. Right? So if you all were following me and you all left, and I have issues that I haven't dealt with, abandonment issues that I haven't dealt with, now you all are leaving not because of me, but because God is taking you somewhere else. But I make it about me. Because I haven't allowed God to heal me in that area, or take that journey with him in deliverance in that area, or I'm not mature enough to understand that just like when it comes to a plant that needs to be repotted, 90% of the time, if not higher, the plant needs to be repotted, not because of the pot, but because of the plant.
Come on.
Because in order for the plant to grow more and to expand into what it's really supposed to be, it needs more space. And sometimes it's not that the pot is damaged. It's not that there's something wrong with the pot. It's just that the plant needs more for it to grow more. And I believe we harp and we beat up and we talk about loyalty because of a lack of maturity and other underlying issues that we don't see on the surface, that we haven't fully dealt with. Because if at the end of the day, I'm taking on that perception that some water and some plant, or I built, as you continue to go down in the scripture, it says he builds one part of the foundation, then somebody else comes along and builds, then somebody else comes. Like, if we really believe that, then we'll be okay with understanding that it's ultimately God's and that we're a part of. There's a section that we had to build and we built it well.
You know, it's almost in order for us to really comprehend what you're saying, we almost have to add different words to our vocabulary so people can really understand what God is doing. Because sometimes God is not trying to make you grow more. He's trying to get you to grow differently. Technically speaking, a person can be growing in the wrong ways at some point, and they're still growing, and they're growing at a rapid rate, but they're not growing in the direction that God has for them to grow, right? Sometimes it's not that God is sending you to somebody who is more skilled in an area. Sometimes he's sending you to someone who is more appropriately skilled for the part of your life he's sending you to. Appropriate skill, meaning they're both skilled, they're both gifted, but there's something in this gift that's going to move you in a direction of purpose. And so I think it's almost like we look at so many things in a hierarchical place, right? I didn't think I said that word right. Hierarchical.
Hierarchy.
Okay. And so right? So it's like, oh, this person is better than this person, and this person's gift is bigger than this person. I don't think that it's always that. Because it's not always Jesus to John, John to Jesus. You know what I mean? It's John to John. And so at the end of the day, I think what's really happening is God moves you in a direction of a person who will grow you a specific way for this season. It's not better or worse. It's differently. And that, if you were able to really see that, we take the competition out of it. We take the false sense of loyalty out of it. We take the ego bruising out of it. And we just say the season up for the direction where this person's life was going in.
Because man, and as you say that, I think of a couple of things. I think as a whole, we that we want to grow people faster, stronger, instead of growing them fuller, healthier. And so I think about it in this way. Since we're all Highlands here, we all remember Geauga Lake. Geauga Lake was an amazing amusement park. I don't know the time frame, so I'm not going to even try to do that. But then Geauga Lake turned to Six Flags. Mm-hmm. So the thing with Six Flags was supposed to be the amusement park of amusement parks. Like, it was supposed to be the creme de la creme. It was supposed to be big and massive and wonderful. And it was big. It was huge. Six Flags was a massive amusement park. And they grew really big and they grew really fast. And if you go down in Geauga County now, Geauga Lake does not exist anymore. And they don't exist anymore because they grew too big, too fast. They didn't have anything to really sustain the growth that they were having. They thought was, oh man, let's go bigger, let's expand out. And so they expand all the different sections. And once one of the sections of the amusement park wasn't working, all right, let's shut that down. Now we're just going to do, the apartment, and we'll just do the rides and the water park over here. Water park isn't doing good. Okay, let's shut down the water park. Let's just do the rides. Okay, this whole Six Flags thing isn't working. Let's go back to Geauga Lake. And then eventually, again, if you roll down that road, I forget what the road's called, but Geauga Lake is a ghost town now. It's weird. It's creepy.
Full of weeds.
Huh?
I said it's full of weeds.
Yeah. And so the thing, we want to grow faster, bigger, stronger. But the language is in all of even what we've been saying. And I'm also saying this because currently, as Mo and Darius know, I've been listening to The Garden Within from Dr. Anita Phillips, and saying how basically we're not things to be basically we are people that we need to be grown and cultivated. And so in the things that Derek, you just said, oh, nothing's wrong with the pot. It's the plant. The plant needs to grow bigger. And all throughout scripture, there's all this language talking about plants growing, all that yada yada yada. We cling to the growing, but we don't really cling to the cultivation part of it, of what it takes to grow. Because there's a cultivation, there is a process in growing. There's a right way to grow. Because like in the parable of like the seed, like of the sower, the parable of the sower, seed went to stony ground, seeds went into the thorny ground, blah blah blah, so on and so forth, right? And I think about like the seed that was dropped into the thorny, it grew, but it could only grow but so much, because there's things that were hindering its growth. And so I think a lot of times, and maybe sometimes within the church now, I think we're seeing a lot of thorny things that have grown to a point, but then we look like, man, I thought that was going to grow a little bit more. It's because the foundation isn't good. You just wanted to shoot up and grow and get to it, but you didn't take the necessary work to cultivate and to make sure, hey, no, we're going to grow healthy. We're going to
But
grow strong.
I
We're going to grow full and vibrant.
I think there's a reason for that though. I think part of the reason for that is because we don't tell the whole story about what we really go through in life, and that's part of what's supposed to happen in discipleship, right? Let's go back to the story we were talking about earlier. In the book of Matthew, it says that Jesus gets baptized and the Spirit leads him up into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil, and after 30 days, the devil comes to him and says, "If you are truly this," okay, well, how about what it says in the book of Luke? Because in the book of Luke, it says he was tempted for 40 days and for 40 nights. And then when he became hungry, then the devil said, right? So there's two different narratives there. One narrative says he went 40 days and then the temptation. The other narrative says he was tempted for 40 days. And I think that a lot of men and women of God do an improper job of telling what they really go through in life. So they say, get bigger, stronger, faster, better, the way I did. But they don't tell you that the way that they did it was that they had to overcome 40 days and 40 nights of hell. They skip out on part of the narrative and part of the story and part of the journey because they just want to look shiny. And I think that there's a reason why Jesus allows for both of those versions of the story to be there. Because in one version, he shows you that he was able to withstand a thing, and he was able to take his body into submission. But then there's also this understanding the devil was at him the whole time, and he was just stronger. The devil was trying the whole time. He was able to resist in such a way that the devil shut up and didn't try that hard. You see what I'm saying? Like, he gives us both of those understandings because not everybody gets to see your vulnerability. But if this is real discipleship, your disciples should. If this is true closeness and mentorship, they should get a chance to see your scars. And I think that that's often where we err in this era of time, is that nobody wants to acknowledge the real grapples that they've dealt with. That's why Michael Todd telling those types of stories is so important, because most people aren't even going to tell you those stories.
Because man, like why else do we love like biopics and stuff like that, like on a media tip, right? Like, I don't know, I just randomly thought about like The Blind Side, right? Like everybody loves the story of The Blind Side. Why do you love the story of The Blind Side? Because it gives you, though fictional, an interesting look of like, how did you, like, what was the story of how you overcame and like really like got through what you got through. Like those kind of depictions and documentaries, those draw people because that actually tells the full story. But I don't know why, like within the church, we feel like we can't tell the full story. And with that, so it's like, I think it's up to the mentor to tell the full story, but it's up to the mentee to have the maturity to hear the full story. Because the immature want it quick now, let's go. The mature knows that it's a process and it's got to roll. Because I think about it, like my son is 4 years old. I can promise him something, say, hey, I'm going to get you this. He's going to ask about 4, 5, 6, 7 times right in a row. And I'm like, did you not hear me? Like, what? You gotta wait. Like, it's coming. you gotta wait. But he's like, no, I want it now, and they'll grow a fit. And how many times have, I won't even say we, I think about how many times I have thrown a fit, being immature, being impatient. Like, no, I just want it now. Like, no, I don't want to hear the wisdom. I want the success. Like, I want the stuff. I want the things.
Mm.
Like I like I want the glory. I don't care about the story. I just want to get to. I just can we get to the good part? Like that's what I want to get to. But it takes a maturity to say like, okay, it's not going to be a quote unquote overnight success because there is no such thing. But it's going to take time and everything. And so the mentee has to slow down and get that maturity part Darius was talking about of like, hey, gonna like you got to be mature, you got to take time, you got to slow down. And then Maurice, to your part, like there has to be openness, vulnerability. You have to show them the full ropes, the full steps, because you didn't just arrive out of a vacuum. So why are you just going to give them a formula of how we got here? There's no formula. The lessons are in the story and in the experiences, and it's in that the wisdom is that we gain the wisdom
Mm.
to move forward in life.
Darius, I'm sure you have something before you jump in. I just want to invite you guys, if you're watching right now, would you share this with a friend? Would you leave some comments so we know who's watching? We don't know who's watching, but there's somebody watching right now. So let us know you're watching. Let us know what you're getting out of this conversation. As always, feel free to give us your questions, your thoughts. Feel free to take the conversation over and send us in a direction. If you're watching, let us know that you're appreciating this. So Darius, what you got?
Man, honestly, I don't have a whole lot to add to what Jason said. I think that the way he kind of communicated everything, at least for me, it resonates. Um, the key stuff that I said, I think is as far as that maturity piece, I feel is just so important. Um, yeah, I don't know if I really have much to add to it. You know, I just think that we do have to. One of the things that I will say, just thinking about what Jason said as far as the tantrums and stuff, and just understanding it, like a lot of the times when that stuff happens, you don't get what you really want,
Mm.
and you're not able to enjoy you're what it is that was meant for you to enjoy. Right? I think about in this moment, I'm thinking about Exodus and the children of Israel and how like their lack of belief, their lack of patience, their tantrums is the thing that allowed a whole generation to miss out on the promised land
Mm.
because they just wouldn't come around and just wouldn't get it together and wasn't willing to sacrifice, wasn't willing to be patient and see what else was on the other side. And so, I think to me that's kind of sobering. It is like, man, he wanted it for them more than they wanted it for themselves. And their behavior, even though he kept his word, right? He kept his word to the people as a whole, but the individuals that were supposed to see it didn't see it.
I mean, I think that starts in the garden, doesn't it? God wanting something for you that's different than what you want for yourself, in part because you're thinking about what you lack and God has already provided everything, right? I think that's where we get twisted up. And I think that also speaks to, again, the maturity that it takes if you're going to be discipled, if you're going to be mentored, right? That we all have limitations to our patience. We all
Yeah.
have limitations to our comfort zone, and growth happens outside of your comfort. It happens outside of what is often even reasonable to you. That uh, recently I've been spending time with with one mentor, um, and he says if you are with someone who's doing something that you've never done and they're living a life you've never lived, you can't expect for their advice to feel practical. He said because it's impractical for you to live a life that is outside of the realm of anything you've ever lived. Their advice is going to be counter to what you think is correct. Their knowledge and their wisdom is going to be counter to the direction you think you're supposed to go in because they're telling you to go in a totally different direction. And there's a certain level of humility in that. That's not easy to come by, but it is required for growth.
Yeah, man, that's good.
I wish I could say I made it up.
And and another one thing that you said that I want to bring up, or piggyback off rather, is when it's the whole thing of like that lack piece. Because I feel like if some kind of mentor or if you're gonna go through some kind of discipleship, it's not like I feel like those things bring out something that was deep within you. I think that more waters a seed that was in you versus being something that you never had to begin with. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So it's like if like I'm trying to think of like a quick like mentorship kind of type thing. Um, I'm thinking about my boy John, right? Like he is a phenomenal person, but like phenomenal producer, drummer, everything. Like he does all the things. Shout out to my boy John Winfrey. But when I first met John, the very thing that like I heard about him was like, oh man, that's Mook's prodigy. Like that like basically like a really professional, well-known drummer within the Cleveland area and the world now because like he's a touring he's a touring drummer. Like Mook is crazy. But I always heard that like, oh man, like that, like John was who was under Mook. And like that, like that's his mentor, that's his big brother and everything like that, right? And so it's not that John had just picked up sticks for the first time. Like usually I feel like a mentor, like whoever you are mentored by or whoever you're discipled by, is basically a ghost of your future. Like or no more of an example of your future, that's better. That they just represent where you could be, like they represent who you are and represent maybe a more matured, more further ahead version of who you are. I think there's always somebody, always something within a mentor that you see yourself in them. That's why you're attracted to them. Or they have something that's like, oh man, I'm kind of like that. That's why they lean towards that, you know. Or when you think about like basketball, like certain big men, that's why they always lean towards like, oh man, fashion my game after Hakeem Olajuwon or something like that. And so you see certain elements of the game that looks like that, looks like him because that was always in them. So, I guess I say that to say, you know, sometimes some people may search for mentorship or discipleship trying to find out who they are, feel like they're lacking something, but actually you're not lacking anything. This is just, I feel like, God's opportunity. If it's a mentor from God, it's God's opportunity to water something that's always been inside of you. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, although the only caveat to that though was that you may lack knowledge. So you may lack something. You know what I mean? You may not lack the gift. You know what I mean? Like you may not lack talent or worth, but you may lack knowledge and direction. And I think that that's the whole point of mentorship often, right? Is like to help you cultivate what already exists or to
Yeah.
help shape what already is, right? And the shaping is a lack of something. It's a, if nothing else, just a lack of a beginning point of a lack of understanding and awareness, maybe.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, talking about that growth, it made me think about like how we grow. And I meant to mention this earlier. It made me think about Pastor Laugh had gave this example that I seen on Instagram where he was talking about being at an orchard, and he had talked to the lady about why some of the young trees had these sticks around them, and her reasoning behind it was they wanted to control the growth so that it didn't grow wildly and out of control. And Maurice, you kind of hit on it earlier, and I feel like that's one of the important things about having discipleship and having certain people around us is because we're going to grow. But the direction that we grow in and how we grow is dictated by the surroundings that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to grow in a direction. It's inevitable. Like, but you can either grow, you can either have boundaries where you're growing into a husband or you're growing into somebody that's for the streets.
Mm.
Like,
Tell
but
the
for
truth.
real though, like those are things like we think about like the train of the child and the way they should go, right? But it worked. But this is one of the things I was tripping off of not too long ago. Like, it works both ways. The principle works. So I can train up a child however I want them to grow,
Mm.
and they won't depart from it.
Come on.
And so we see certain things where it's like, man, why does this person act this way? But we can look up videos right now on YouTube or TikTok or something like that, and you see this little child that's doing stuff that they should not be doing at all, or doing adult things like, whatever, insert whatever popular song here that kids shouldn't be listening to, and they know it word for word. And it's being encouraged. Like, Karen showed me something not too long ago where it was like a group of like none of these little girls could have possibly been older than 7, and like it's like a 7-year-old twerk fest.
Hmm.
and they're singing Sexy Red, and it's like, are you serious? Like, and I've seen it too when I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, and we're on the playground, and it was this song that was inappropriate for kids to be singing, and a group of little girls is over there singing the song and going in and doing like the same type of situation. It's like, you got this from somewhere. Where did you get it from? But to me, it's the way that it's those boundaries, it's those sticks that's around the tree, and the way that the tree is going to grow is based off of what's around it. And that influence it's powerful. And I think that, like, going back to what Jason was talking about a little bit earlier, and what Mike Todd said, like, sometimes it's about who gets to you first.
Hmm.
And if you're willing, if you don't have the knowledge, like you said, Maurice, like, if you don't have the knowledge to understand that this isn't wrong, or you just looking at the influence that this person has or the things that they have, like, you can be influenced by anybody.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Because of what you deem as successful, what you deem as something that is freeing. Like, in the hood, the reason why people lean towards the drug dealers is because their lives look better than the ones that we're living in the hood.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, they don't see any other options. So their lack of exposure leads them in a direction to try to satisfy a desire or a need that honestly isn't a wrong desire.
Yeah, because drug dealers are successful. There's just different types of success.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
and I think that's how sometimes again when we talk about subjects, when we make them so black and white that it's like better or not, like good or not good. Like sometimes it's like there's shades of good. There's different types of good. There's different types of growth. There's different types of evolution. There's different types of transformation. Like it's not all one thing. There's a whole bunch of successful drug dealers. The question is, do they have the type of success that you want for your life? Right? There's a whole bunch of successful business people. But that means a whole bunch of different things because there's some business people who are successful and live a life that I wouldn't want. They got a bank account maybe I want, but they're bankrupt and everything else in their life, so that really wouldn't work for me as success. And so we need to understand that like there's different even to be a chemical dependency counselor, right? One of the things that I say all the time, which I suppose is somewhat controversial, is that people always talk about having a drug problem. And I say, most of these people don't have drug problems, they have drug solutions. And like, what? And I'm like, they have a problem. They're turning to the drugs and alcohol to solve their problem.
yeah,
They feel empty, they feel hopeless, they feel angry, they feel bitter, they feel hurt, they feel scarred, they feel wounded, they have problems. They turn to the alcohol to fill the problems. They don't have a drug problem, they have a drug solution. So if we're gonna have to figure out what their real problems are, help them with their real problems and give them alternative solutions.
yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And that's a weird way to look at it, and at the same time, it's not weird at all
Yeah, because it's the truth.
because it's the truth.
Because the answer to the problem is a solution.
There you go.
So if they're looking for solutions, and it's just the type of solution, it may be a temporary solution, but it's a solution nonetheless that works for them in the moment.
It's a short-term solution to long-term problems, right? And ultimately, God's way of doing things provides long-term solution to long-term problems, but oftentimes it's a greater fight in the short term. True growth, true healthy growth and cultivation takes more time early on, but the fruit comes over time. All right, it is 9:27. Final words, final thoughts from you two gentlemen.
For me, I would say like I don't know, I guess just be intentional in what you want to grow because I feel like who intend to grow, that's what you may attract. And so just be intentional of what you want to grow, what you want things to look like, how you want your life to look like. And then the only other thing I would say, if it took Jesus 30 years before him walking into what he was purposed to do, then you have a cultivation process as well. It's my newborn. Y'all don't even worry about that. He's right here. But but yeah,
Not the little arm though. You're right here.
you know, we're not ready to put them on social media yet. And so I know because we on social media, I don't want to be like, hey, here's my baby. But usually,
Yeah. Here's a piece of them.
oh, hey, we hear you, Emilio. We hear you. I say what I need to say.
I appreciate you, brother. Anything from you, D?
Yeah, I just kind of want to just circle back around, and we were talking. We started just talking about what I was tripping on is just discipleship and how do we do that? And so I just want us to remember, man. Like I think one of the key things for me at the beginning was take the time to really pray and seek God on who it is that should be a disciple in you and prepare yourself for it, because sometimes we get in our own way trying to find what it is that we think we need. And what you may need may not look like the most popular person at the time or the most successful person in what you want to do. There may be some stuff that God wants to work on you now for that. And so he may send somebody to you that has an amazing internal life. And externally, you may not see the glitz and the glamour that you would be attracted to. But yet, when it comes to their personal life, everything is amazing.
Hmm.
And so I think that would be, just the main thing is like really like when it comes to discipleship, inspect the fruit, be a fruit inspector, see, don't just run into something based off of popularity or based off of what you heard. Um, do the research on your own, figure it out on your own, because many of us can say something about somebody, but where I'm at in my life is just like, well, what does your relationship with this person look like for real? Is this just hearsay or do you know them?
Hmm.
Because to know a person and to go off of hearsay is two different things.
Sure is.
The disciples really knew Jesus. What people said about him was a different story.
Mm. Mm. And there you have it. So we hope that you guys got something out of this conversation today. We hope that you were inspired, that you were moved in some way. Do us a favor, share this link with somebody who needs it. Make sure that you guys leave us your comments. I actually just realized that I went to my Facebook and checked like 10 minutes ago, and somehow the video was set to private. So hopefully people will be watching it after the fact. So please do help spread the word. Leave your comments. We'll make sure we peek in and take a look. And then we invite you to peek in with us next week on Wednesday, because we will be back. Hopefully all four of us that time. Well, there'll be four somebodies on this screen next week. So we'll see you then. God bless you guys. Have a good night.